What is going on, guys? This is Earpugs, and today we are going to be doing the MoP tier list. Now, this specific tier list is going to be for every class and spec in the game, and it is going to be for Season 12, which is the very first season of Mists of Pandaria. This tier list will be covering every class and spec in Mists of Pandaria, primarily focusing around 3v3 as well as some 2v2. Going from Cataclysm to Mists of Pandaria is an absolute massive leap in terms of how the game is structured, in terms of how classes operate, cooldowns, mobility, damage, CD trading, even the health and the damage distribution is completely different going into Mists of Pandaria. Starting off with the Priest class, we have one of my favorite specs in the game, the Discipline Priest. Now, unfortunately, in Mists of Pandaria, Disc Priest is just a worse version of Holy for a multitude of reasons. To oversimplify, Disc Priests in Mists of Pandaria have one ability which is called Spirit Shell. Spirit Shell is an ability that simply turns your healing into a big shield. That's all it does. So if you press Spirit Shell, you cast a flash heal. Instead of them getting healed for, let's say, 50,000, they now have a shield for 50,000. That ability has a cooldown and is kind of pointless in PvP. The only benefit you could ever have, let's say you know they're going to do a big go on a target, you could like pre-heal that target with Spirit Shell, but the amount of times that the other team would see a 400k shield and then just go through it, they would never do that. They would just switch the kill target. So on top of that, Penance hits for the same number that it does in Wrath of the Lich King. Penance, unfortunately, does nothing. They don't have Surge of Light. They don't have Guardian Spirit. They don't have They don't have Lightwell. They don't have Holy Word Serenity. So all of that is going to be putting Discipline into the D tier, unfortunately, for MoP Arena. There's really no comp that I could possibly see where you would say, oh no, you would play Disc over Holy here in MoP. It's just not a thing. You would never say that, because Holy is better in every regard. Moving on to the new and improved Priest in Mists of Pandaria, we have the Holy Priest. Now, the Holy Priest gets a swath of changes and buffs, going from the whole timeline of TBC, Wrath, Cataclysm, to Mists of Pandaria now. It is the first time in all of the classic expansions where Holy is not only better than Disc, but significantly better than Disc. Holy Priests are primarily instant cast healers, which is really, really strong, because in Mists of Pandaria, you need instant heals sometimes that are worth a lot. And Holy Priests get a chance to get a Surge of Light, which gives them an instant flash heal every time they press any kind of a heal. So you can literally sit there, press renew, and just get an instant proc for a flash of light that lasts for a pretty long time. I believe it's about 20 seconds. Priests also get Angelic Feather, making them really, really fast. You are able to put down 3 feathers, with an internal cooldown that rotates, and you can put them on yourself, on your teammates, on whoever. It makes you really fast. Priests also pick up Life Swap as a new ability. It's called Void Shift, but everybody calls it Life Swap. It will instantly switch your health bar with another person's health bar, which is really, really insane. You'll notice a trend in Mists of Pandaria, because in MoP, all of the healers become giga broken. Like if you took a single healer from any of these tier lists, Resto Druid, Holy Pally, Arsham, Holy Priest, and you put them in Cata or Wrath or TBC, they would be the best healer in the game by 20 miles. Like, it's not even comparable. Every healer in MoP is so broken, it's unbelievable. And since everything in MoP is kind of broken, that's what makes it balanced in a way. The reason that Holy Priest is going to go very strong into the A tier is because they have a ton of mobility for their team with the Feather, as I mentioned. They have Chastise now, which allows you to 30-yard instant cast, incapacitate somebody for 3 seconds, and then you use your Feather, you fly across the arena. You can even go invisible with Spectral Guise, and then you go Fear the guy, and then you have Dominate Mind as well. You have Psy Fiend, Dominate Mind, which is Mind Control. It doesn't have a DR with Fear, so you can literally Chastise, Sprint, Fear, Mind Control, Mind Control, Mind Control, then your Mage Blankets, then your Mage Sheeps. Mage has instant Sheep. Like, the CC is insane in Mists of Pandaria. So they are definitely a very strong healer. I would not put Holy Priest into the S tier, just because, let's say you kill their Lightwell, They don't have Guardian and they don't have Trinket, right? They are a very CCable healer, and although they are going to roll Renew on people and stuff with Palm, and their shields are all right in MoP, the general vibe is that they can't do a lot of healing if they're in crowd control, and they don't have many avenues to mitigate that, right? They have Shadow Word Death, they have Fear Ward, they have some avenues. But if you get hit with one of the 10 million instant CCs in Mists of Pandaria, Stormbolt, Blanket Nova, Palm Sheep, Howl of Terror, Shadow Fury, Death Coil, there's just a million CCs that can hit you, and they start the CC chain. You are going to not play your character, sometimes for 30 seconds, and that puts a lot of pressure on your DPS, whereas a class like Resto Druid would have HOTS rolling on that target. Resto Druid can also use Ironbark and Sen Ward and Silence, which is really ridiculous. Holy Priests don't have any abilities they can use while silenced. With all that being said, they are still very strong, definitely a rank 1 capable spec. Holy Priest is very, very good. It's pretty fun if you like to be mobile. And overall, yeah, just a super strong healer. Has a great amount of comps. They're a very tempo-based healer. Like, if you are a very pressure comp, like RMP or jungle, right, you have a lot of damage. You're putting a lot of CC. You have a lot of front-loaded goes. That's where Holy Priest is really, really good. They don't really want to dampen. Holy Priest doesn't really want to go super late game. They want to end fast. They want to use their Chastise Fear every 30 seconds off CD. That's basically what Holy Priest is all about in Mists of Pandaria, is Chastise Fear, and then, in between you're going to throw your chakras, you're going to throw your instants, you're going to give feathers, you're going to purge, you're going to clean, and that's how they play. Moving up next, we have the Holy Paladin. Now, the Holy Paladin is very, very strong, just like pretty much every other healer in Mists of Pandaria. Every healer is very, very strong. I would put the Holy Paladin into the A tier for sure. It is a very, very strong healer, and in terms of how does the class work, it doesn't really change. And from, let's say, Wrath to Cata to Mists of Pandaria, the Holy Paladin is very similar to Cata as well as Wrath. If the Holy Pali's free and they're casting, nobody's dead, ever. Like, nobody could ever die. Like, they have such spike heals. They also get a little bit of a hot with Illuminated Healing now. But as far as a concept goes, like, what does Holy Pally bring to the table, right? You've got freedoms, you've got bubble, you've got bop, you've got sacrifice, you have wings, you have guardian. It's a huge, huge thing in terms of pressure. It's a very pressure-based healer. On top of that, since the heals have been buffed so dramatically in Mists of Pandaria, Holy Pally now can actually dampen a little bit compared to what it could before. So, obviously, is a Holy Pally the best dampener healer in the game? Certainly not. But can a Holy Paladin in MoP go late game much better than it could in Cata? Absolutely. It's uncomparable to in terms of how strong every healer is. As far as what H-Pallies get out of Mists of Pandaria, they do have Turn Evil, which is a castable fear now that lasts 8 seconds. That is a pretty big deal. Eternal Flame is that hot that I mentioned before. And then they also get an ability called Blinding Light, which is a 6-second disorient. They can basically run up to somebody, cast it, and then it's like a blind, where they'll just walk around. It's a disorient for 6 seconds. It'll break on damage. One of the biggest weaknesses that Holy Pallies have always had, which is that they don't have a lot of CC, right? They don't have Shear. They don't have Purge. They don't have Fear. They don't have Mind Control. They don't have Cyclone. They don't have Bash, right? Now they have Fear. Now they have Blinding Light. They also have a sprint now, too. Holy Pallies can sprint around, which makes pretty much everybody in MoP can sprint around. Like, in terms of Wrath to Cata to MoP, MoP is the beginning of, like, these retail-style mobilities where everybody is infinitely fast all the time. Like, everybody's Demon Hunter in MoP, pretty much, with a very select few classes like Warlock that are not like that. But most classes are just Demon Hunter at all times. Everybody's flying around. That's just kind of how it is in MoP. The mobility creep is a little insane, I'm not going to lie. But moving forward, that is kind of what Holy Pally does. They are very, very strong when they are loose. They do suffer from the same fate of a Holy Priest, right? If the Holy Pally gets controlled for a long time and they're not able to do these huge shocks, these huge instant casts, these divine lights, these guardian heals, then obviously you're dead, right? So you have a lot of tools to mitigate it, of course. Hand of Sack, Bubble, Trinket, Freedoms, etc., etc. Hammer of Justice, if you want to spec into Hodge. But overall, they're going to land themselves a spot in the A tier because they are very strong, and when played correctly, they are certainly an extremely viable healer who is very, very competitive. Moving on to the elephant in the room. In Cataclysm, Restoration Druids were pretty much completely unviable. They unfortunately got the nerf bat so badly on the last patch of Cata that they were just nerfed out of existence in Cataclysm. And to fix that, Blizzard decided, hey, why don't we make Resto Druid the best healer in the game, unquestionably. And so, since they did that, this is what we ended up with. In Mists of Pandaria, Resto Druid is certainly S tier. They are the best healer in the game by a decent margin. I'm not going to say that it's not so bad where it's like, oh my god, they have Resto Druid, we can't win. Like, it's not like that, of course. But it's certainly like, the Resto Druid's kit is the biggest. They have the most. They have everything in Mists of Pandaria. The list of abilities that Resto Druid gets going into Mists of Pandaria, I could make a whole video on just the list of abilities. So I'll try to summarize it and keep it quick for you guys. Resto Druid in Mists of Pandaria is still a hot-based healer. They still use Rejuvenation. They still use Life Blooms. You know, they have all these healing over time effects, but they also pick up something that they've never had in all of Classic Arena. Resto Druid is one of the only classes that from TBC to Wrath of the Lich King to Cataclysm has never had a Hand of Sacrifice, a Pain Suppression, a Power Word Barrier. They've never had anything like that. So now in Mists of Pandaria, they have an ability called Iron Bark, which is just a damage mitigation cooldown. And it has a 30-second cooldown. On top of all of that, it's usable while you're silenced. So that is just insane. They went from having 0 damage mitigation CDs to having the best damage mitigation CDs in the history of the game up until Mists of Pandaria. So that's just Iron Bark. Moving past that, they have the highest output in terms of total healing over time. If you have a target that a Resto Druid put every hot in the game on, that guy is basically invulnerable, and you're not going to be able to kill them unless you actually have like the special beam cannon lined up and have a whole health bar worth of damage in 1 second lined up. Resto Druids pick up Displacer Beast, which allows them to blink across the arena. They pick up Cenarion Ward now, which is another damage mitigation CD, also castable while silenced. They have their normal toolkit of a bunch of hots like Wild Growth, Life Bloom, Rejuve, Regrowth. Their Swift Mend now hits for a truckload, gives them 100% haste after their Swift Mend, as well as having the ability to shift to stop themselves from getting polymorphed. They also have a Silence that is castable in bear form. They can Fairy Fire somebody in bear form if they glyph it, and it will silence them for 3 seconds. They can run over to somebody and disorient them for 3 seconds with their bear form roar. They have Cyclone, they have Entangling Roots. They also have a Knock now, and then of course they still have Meld Pounce, and on top of all of that, they can also have a Bash. To say that our Druid isn't the best healer is just factually incorrect. Their toolkit is absolutely insane. They have insane heals, the most control out of any healer in the game, huge damage mitigation CDs. They have a huge toolkit to avoid themselves from getting CC'd. They also get Heart of the Wild, which is a huge heal for themselves. They also get Symbiosis, which allows you to take an ability from another class and then swap it to them as well. It works differently with every other class, but if they switch with a Warrior, for example, they get Warrior Fear. And if they switch with a bunch of other classes, they get one of their spells, of course. With all that being said, our Druid is obviously the dominant healer. And as I mentioned before, I don't want to say that, oh, our Druid is better than everyone and nobody should play another healer, because that couldn't be further from the truth. In Mists of Pandaria, every healer is kind of just giga broken. So, although our Druid is the most broken, all the other healers are, except for Disc. Disc is awful, which is so sad for me to say. But all the other healers are very, very, very strong. Up next, we have the Restoration Shaman. Now, this healer has the same style of changes going into Mists of Pandaria in terms of Cataclysm to MoP, etc. They still use totems. The biggest difference is that now Healing Stream is a big heal. It is a cooldown-based heal instead of having a constant stream. But they are still using Riptide, they are still using Earth Shield, and they are still shearing the enemy. They still have Purge, they still have Ground. So the playstyle is pretty similar to how it was in Cataclysm. They have Spirit Link, etc. With that being said, their healing output is very, very strong, and they are probably, I don't want to say that they're the best at it, but they're extremely good at passive healing. Like, if you had a heal off of just who could AFK 100 yards away and just passively keep their team alive, Arsham is definitely going to be one of the top of the list there. They are so good at just rolling passive heals 24/7, AoE healing. They have some of the best multi-healing in the entire game. They do still have Hex, and they can still be offensive when they need to, but they're generally speaking a much more passive healer than you would see from really even any of these three. Resto Druid, Holy Priest, Holy Paladin, all three of these are going to be more aggressive than an Arch Shaman, even the H-Pal, since you have Hodge, of course, and Blinding Light now is H-Pal. So there's not a whole lot to talk about. They're a very strong healer. Arsham is definitely going to go into the A tier. It is certainly, rank 1 viable. Druid, rank 1 viable. H-Priest, rank 1 viable. H-Pal, rank 1 viable. Arsham, rank 1 viable. Every healer is God tier in MoP for the most part. They're all very strong. Up next, we have a brand new class for Mists of Pandaria, and it wouldn't be Mists of Pandaria if it wasn't for the Mistweaver. We do have an extremely powerful healer. This is, of course, on the Monk class, which is the new class that they added. The Mistweaver is a very aggressive healer. They can play in on top of something, doing damage. So they can be a very aggressive healer when they want to. They are also very good at sitting back with their Jade Statue and just cranking out heals. Monks get a new ability in Mists of Pandaria, which is called Ring of Peace. And in my opinion, it is the most broken ability that's ever been added so far in Classic, across TBC, Wrath, Cataclysm, and now MoP. Ring of Peace, in its Mists of Pandaria form, is an ability that has a pretty short cooldown. I believe it's 45 seconds. And they can put it on a target, which is their teammates or themselves. And anything that is in like this 20-yard, 15-yard AoE area that sticks to the player is going to be silenced and disarmed with no counterplay. So it is just absolutely crazy in terms of how OP it is. Let's say someone's about to get all-in by a melee cleave. You put a Ring of Peace on that player, and the two melees are completely useless for the rest of that Ring of Peace, which is just insane. No other class in the game has an ability like that. They have some of the highest healing output as well. They have huge burst heals, as well as having the most mobility in the game with roll. They also have a teleport. They're hard to kill, too, because if you stun a Mistweaver, they go invulnerable, kind of like iframes, for the next 2 seconds. So if you stun a Mistweaver, they're uncastable, unhittable for the next 2 seconds. So they're very strong for just a multitude of reasons. If they don't want to go with Ring of Peace, they can go with Leg Sweep. They also have a paralysis ability, which is like an incapacitate. They also have Nimble Brew, which allows them to get out of a CC, so they literally have a second trinket, which is pretty insane. They are able to put orbs on the ground to heal their teammates, and when they need to, they can cast, which gives a huge amount of healing. Overall, the Mistweaver Monk is an extremely powerful healer. I don't know if I would put it at the top of A or the bottom of S, at least how it feels from my anecdotal evidence. If you're fighting like a really high-level Mistweaver, they are just a nightmare to deal with. Like they roll around, they're so hard to CC. They have such a big kit. They can kick you, they can sweep you, they can Ring a Piece you, whatever spec they chose, they have a way to stop you from stopping them. With that being said, I think it's a pretty high skill cap healer. It is one of those healers where if you kind of get tripped up on your globals, it's very easy to fall behind and just lose right there. But if you're very proactive, you're very ahead of the curve, I personally believe that Mistweaver would be in either bottom of S or top of A. I'm going to put it in the bottom of S, to be honest, because it's just so strong. Like, they can dampen, they can burst heal, they have control, they have mobility, they have instant heals, they have casted heals, they have everything. They also have a disarm, so their toolkit is absolutely ridiculous. With all of that information, I put them in the bottom of S for those reasons. It is a very hard class, but it is an extremely potent one when played correctly. Alrighty, moving past that, we are just going to breeze through these trash specs. So Fury is awful, Prot is bad, Tank Druid is not a thing, Blood Decay is not a thing, Prot Pally is not a thing, Brewmaster is not a thing. So if you're Fury, Prot, Tank, Blood, etc., etc., these are all off meta, not strong. Up next, we have the Retribution Paladin. Now, this is going to be the first of the DPS classes. Ret Pally is very similar, kind of the same situation that Holy Pally is, moving from Cata to Mists of Pandaria. Ret Paladin is the same style of damage for the most part. They do have range damage, of course, like they did in Cata, but they're obviously primarily a melee. They have a lot of utility for their team. They do have a new thing now where if they use their Hand of Sacrifice on one of their teammates, they can break their teammates out of CCs. And if I'm not mistaken, that has 2 charges. They still have Templar's Verdict. They still have Wings. They still do a ton of damage. They are a very bursty class. They still have a lot of off heals. They have a lot of support. They have freedom. They have bop. Overall, there's not a ton of differences from Cata Ret to MoP Ret, other than, the fact that they get the MoP treatment, right? They have mobility, they have speed. They also have the same options that Holy Pally has, where they can choose Repentance, Hammer of Justice, or Turn Evil. Turn Evil is castable now as a fear, and then they have Blinding Light, of course. Putting all of that together, they do suffer from some of the same problems that Retribution Paladin has always had, right? They are a class that has no charge, they have no intervene, they have no blade storm. They don't have a ton of CC, but they do have damage, they have a lot of support. Since they don't have an insane one-shot, and their sustained damage is not as high as it could have been, back in like Wrath, for example, Ret's actually had decent sustained dam. I am going to put Ret into the top of the B tier for all of those reasons. Up next, we have the Subtlety Rogue. Now, this is an interesting class, right? Because for 3 expansions now, we have TBC, right? Rogue is the play, and it's Subtlety, and Rogue is the best melee, arguably, in TBC. In Wrath of the Lich King, while Rogue is not the best melee per se, they are very, very, very strong. In Season 5, I would make the argument that Rogues are better than Warriors are in Wrath of the Lich King. After Season 5, Season 6, 7, 8, then Warriors, of course, would be better than Rogues. And then in Cataclysm, Rogues are very strong Season 9, 10, and then, of course, when they get Bone Link, then Rogue becomes the best class in the entire game, unquestionably, because all you have to do is auto-attack somebody to do 40,000 damage instantly with your Trinket. Moving past all of that, we are now in Mists of Pandaria. And it is the first time that we have seen Rogue fall from grace, right? We have Rogue S tier in all 3 X packs pretty much, maybe A tier in Wrath. We have S tier Rogue TBC, AS depending on the season Wrath, and then S tier S++ Cataclysm. Now, in Mists of Pandaria, I don't know exactly where to put Sub Rogue. They are certainly viable, that's for sure. Subtlety Rogue is definitely a minimum of B. The problems that Sub Rogue has is it's the same as Wrath, kind of. Subtlety Rogue has to have cooldowns to be effective. If you are trying to do damage outside of your burst window as a Subtlety Rogue in Mists of Pandaria, you're really not going to do anything effective for the most part. You need Shadow Dance, you need CDs, you need Subterfuge. You need these abilities if you're going to try to make an effective go. Now, with that being said, if they have the abilities, if they have their bomb, if they have blind, if they have dance, if they have a go, Sub Rogue is very strong in that situation, right? It's just a class that needs to reset, and that's why one of the most popular comps that you will see Sub Rogue being played with is RMD, right? And not RMP. RMP is still good in MoP, of course, but RMD gives the Cyclone reset potential that RMP doesn't, right? Let's say you have a guy really low, you just did your go, and now their healer's going to get out of CC, and remember, every healer's broken in Mists of Pandaria. So if you allow the enemy healer to get out of CC for 1 second, they're probably going to press a button that's going to just about instantly top the guy that's dying, or at least get him up to half so he's unkillable now. And that allows the Druid to Cyclone the target low, then the Druid can go into the healer, and then bash the healer, and then clone the healer, and then knock the healer, and then meld pounce the healer, and then you sheep the healer, and then you blanket the healer, etc., etc., etc. You get it. Subtlety Rogue going into Mists of Pandaria is definitely very strong. I don't know enough, to be honest, about Sub Rogue to make a super expert opinion on it, because I would just be lying to you if I told you I know every single inch of Sub Rogue and MoP, because I don't. That's not true. But from what I've seen and what I've read and what I've played, it's certainly a rank 1 viable class. It's just hard to play, and it's very rigid. You cannot just attack people as Sub Rogue like you could in Cata. In Cata, you could just attack people to death in Season 11. Just attack them, who cares, you're brawling. In MoP, you need to reset, you need to do goes, it needs to be clean. With all that being said, I would put Sub Rogue into the B tier for these reasons. The playstyle is very resetty. It's much closer to Wrath than it is to Cataclysm for sure, but I don't think it's as strong as Wrath Rogue is. With that being said, still pretty good, strong. I wouldn't say it's weak. It's just hard to play and super comp dependent, because it's definitely not weak. And for all those reasons, it goes into the B tier, which is the strong tier. All right, up next we got Combat Rogue. Uh-oh. I actually have only fought one Combat Rogue. Some of the weird stuff they did in Mists of Pandaria is they give rogues these talents like Burst of Speed, where you can just sprint around the arena at all times as all 3 specs. So in past expansions, if you are a Combat Rogue, if you are an Assassination Rogue, right, you're playing Mutilate, you don't have Shadow Step in these past expansions, right? Because you have to choose between Shadow Step or, you know, Mutilate or Killing Spree, right? Now that we're in Mists of Pandaria, that's not how it is anymore, right? You have this new talent tree, everything is choosable, it's a lot less spec dependent. So the whole argument for combat, to my knowledge, is that they have more sustained damage than Sub, but they don't have a ton of burst compared to Sub. Sub has the most amount of burst out of all 3 specs for sure, since they have the Master of Subtlety, and the way it has always been for Sub Rogue, right? When Sub Rogue has Dance, when Sub Rogue has CDs, they're going to be doing a lot of damage in a short time. Truthfully, on Combat Rogue and Mists of Pandaria, I'm not giga educated. I don't know if it is D off meta unviable or C viable. To oversimplify quite a lot, Combat is kind of just a worse version of Warrior, because your sustained damage is lower, and you're just not as scary as a Warrior is with Shockwave and Fear and Stormbolt and Recklessness, etc., etc. So for all those reasons, and since I don't know the most about it, it's definitely going to go into the C tier. I had fought Combat one time on the Mists of Pandaria beta, and it did not seem strong at all. Up next, we have Assassination in Mists of Pandaria. Now, this is going to be S tier for sure. No. No. Assassination, I haven't even seen it. It's just Mutilate. Mutilate is just sustained damage, but they don't have enough sustained damage to justify them over a Warrior, as I said previously, right? They're kind of the same. Combat and Mutilate are pretty much very, very similar in terms of playstyle. I've seen Combat, I haven't even seen Assassination. So for that reason, I'm going to put Assassination into the D tier, because I haven't even seen a Mutilate player. I haven't even seen one of them. Up next, we have the Shadowy Wizard Demon Man. We have the Destruction Warlock. Now, Destro is in an interesting place in Mists of Pandaria, because it is better than it was in Cata, but worse than it was in Wrath. So it's in this in-between phase where it's certainly good in certain comps, but it needs those comps to enable it. One of the biggest problems that Destro Warlock has is that Chaos Bolt is now a 3-second cast before you get haste. That's like legit casting a res almost. So in terms of a fast-paced game like Mists of Pandaria is, where everybody has Nimble Brew or Unbound Will or all these CDs to get out of stuff, they can trinket, they can kick, they can blanket, they can stun you. For you to stand there and just cast a Chaos Bolt and get it off is very difficult. Now, it is possible, don't get me wrong. You have Death Coil, right? You have tools. If you play with a mage, you have a Deep Freeze. You could, like, Palm Sheep 1, Deep 1, Blanket 3, then cast the Chaos Bolt and you send them right there, right? They still use Conflag, they still use Immolate, so the playstyle is similar, but one of the differences now is you get Havoc, and Havoc is a thing that allows you to multicast. So for the first time, Destro is a class where you can cast on multiple targets at once. If you mark a target with Havoc, it's literally reverse Beacon of Light. So you can Chaos Bolt Arena 1, and if you Havoc Arena 2, it will Chaos Bolt both of them. And if you Blanket Silence Arena 1, it will Blanket Silence Arena 1 and 2. Same with Death Coil, you Death Coil 2. So it's certainly viable. It's certainly strong in the right setups. I have fought Destro Locks, and Destro Locks are definitely, Mage Lock Druid seems like a pretty solid comp for them. You definitely need a lot of setup for Destro Lock. They don't have as fluid of a toolkit as Affliction does because of this handicap that they have where they must cast to be effective. If they are casting, don't get me wrong, they're going to be blasting, right? They do a lot of damage, but it's hard to get that window. So, Destro Warlock has to be very good. The team has to play around the Destro Warlock. It's almost like the same situation that the Sub Rogue is in, right? The Sub Rogue, the team needs to play around you. The Destro Warlock, the team needs to play around you. In terms of where would I put Destro Warlock, I don't know where you would put it over Rogue or whatever. I'd probably put it over Ret for sure. But Rogue and Destro Warlock, I don't know. You can make the argument for either one. I don't really care. It's a strong. Rank 1 viable spec, obviously. The only thing is that it's very specific, right? It's very, very specific. Also, guys, so I would say strong and up is rank 1 viable, and then, viable below. If viable is probably Glad. Or maybe, nah, it's got to be Glad. I don't think you're getting rank 1 on this combat. Yeah, so rank 1 and up would be B+, and then C down would be, Glad or whatever. Some other changes that Destro gets is not necessarily a lot. I've already talked about most of the changes. It's almost like a nerf to Destro that they have moved Shadow Fury into the base talent tree, because Shadow Fury is what made Destro strong, especially in Wrath, right? You have this AoE stun where you can cast a Chaos Bolt in the stun, right? You Shadow Fury, you Chaos Bolt Conflag, and that's big damage. That's your go. Most Destros, I believe they actually play Coil now, to my knowledge. But I'm not experienced enough on Destro to make that call. There's probably situations where you'd want either Coil or Shadow Fury, because obviously with Coil you can Havoc somebody double Coil, but I am not educated enough to make that call as to exactly what the perfect talents would be for a Destro Lock. With all that being said, they are certainly viable. They are strong in the right comps, but they need the right team behind them. That lands them a spot in the B tier. Moving on to Demonology. Now, the Demonology Warlock is in an interesting position because it had a lot of different changes over Mists of Pandaria that I don't know all the ins and outs of, but the general gist of Demonology is that the final patch version of it is much weaker than it once was. The primary way that Demonology gets kills is by going into Metamorphosis form and then using Chaos Wave to do a bunch of damage, which is pretty similar, to be honest, to how it works in Wrath as well as Cataclysm. You pop your Metamorphosis, you get your Immolation Aura going, you get all your AoE damage, and you try to land a kill while you have this transformation. Outside of that, it doesn't really have a ton of burst. It's pretty much just a worse version of Destro or Affliction outside of your Metamorphosis, which is kind of the whole drawback, so it's a double-edged sword. When you're in Metamorphosis, you're doing damage, but this is the nerfed version of Metamorphosis. At one point, it was very, very strong, but not currently on the current patch. So for all those reasons, I am going to put it in the C tier. You probably could play it, but I don't think you could get rank 1 with it. Maybe you could if you had some insane God tier players. But overall, for those reasons, I'm going to put it into the C tier. Moving on to the Affliction Warlock. This is an iconic spec and class, of course. In Mists of Pandaria, it is a very strong one. Now, let's talk about how Affliction Lock has changed throughout the expansions, right? In Wrath of the Lich King, which is the birth of Affliction Lock, really, because you play SL, SL, and TBC, of course, you have Unstable Affliction and Corruption as your 2 dots, and then you have Curse of the Elements, right? So you have UA, Corruption, and then you have Haunt as a luxury button. Going into Cataclysm, you have Unstable Affliction, Corruption, Curse of Elements, just like the other ones, except now you have Curse of Agony, right? And then another thing you gain in Cataclysm is you get Soul Swap. So Soul Swap allows you to take your dots and then put them onto somebody else, but it's a 30-second cooldown. This forces you to be in a situation where you're going to cast Unstable Affliction a lot to get your dots up and then Soul Swap it, right? So in Wrath of the Lich King, you're casting Unstable Affliction. In Cataclysm, you're casting Unstable Affliction, you're casting Fear. Now, moving into MoP, they have made more changes to that, where instead of having to cast UA, like you had in the last 2 expansions, you don't have to cast UA at all, really. You do sometimes in niche scenarios, but in most situations, you have a new thing now where you can just press Soul Burn, which you have 4 charges, because it consumes 1 shard, and you have 4 shards that you'll passively regenerate throughout the game. You can then press Demon Soul, and make sure you have your Trinket procs, and then you press Soul Swap, which has 0 CD now. So instead of it being a 30-second cooldown, it is now a 0-second CD. So you Soul Burn, you Demon Soul, you have all your procs, and you Soul Swap a target, and it instantaneously will put Unstable Affliction, Curse of Agony, and then Corruption on that target. And then hold on, because now the fun part starts. You now press Soul Swap again, you pull the dots off of that guy, You then throw the soul swap onto the other guy. You pull the dots off that guy, and then you then throw the soul swap onto their pet. You then take it off the pet. You throw it onto the healer. You take it off the healer. Now the other guy's fallen off. You throw it onto him, and vice versa. That is primarily the change that Affliction Warlock has, which I personally am not a big fan of that change. It makes Aff a lot more... It's a lot easier to play than the other style, but it is certainly very strong, right? And we're doing a tier list, so we're going to be talking about how strong things are in Season 12. With all that being said, Affliction Lock is going to go into the very strong A tier because you do have this ability where you can just Demon Soul Swap and then instantly get your dots and just 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, swap, 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 swap. You just never stop swapping dots. You're just always just destroying people. So they do a lot of damage. They also have Shadow Fury now, which is pretty insane. They have Blood Horror, which is a baseline ability for Warlocks, which is like an ability where you put it on yourself, and if somebody hits you in melee, they will run for 4 seconds. It is breakable, so it's like a coil, but it's a breakable coil. So it's kind of weird. It doesn't DR Fear. And then you also have Unbound Will. Unbound Will is a trinket that also cleans magic. It's just like Sham Rage, basically, but it acts as a trinket. So if you have an Unstable Affliction or a Vampiric Touch and you Unbound Will yourself, you will eat the UA or you will eat the VT. So since you have this new ability to Demon Soul Swap everybody all the time, you also have Shadow Fury on a 30-second cooldown, which is the big AoE stun, which Affliction has never had in the history of the game until this point. And to top it all off, you still have an instant Howl of Terror. So you can instantly fear everybody around you, you can Shadow Fury everybody, you can Soul Swap everybody. They changed Curse of Tongues now, so Tongues is 1 button as weakness. Curse of Tongues and Curse of Weakness are 1 button. This is more of the ability pruning that you see in MoP, where they're making the game like easier and just 1 button for everything. You still have Curse of Elements, you still have Haunt. You now have Malefic Grasp, which is like a channel damage, but that doesn't really matter as much as the Soul Swap with the Demon Soul. For all of those reasons, etc., we are going to be putting it into the very strong tier list, which is where Affliction is going to go for Season 12 specifically. Moving on to the Death Knight. The Death Knight is a very, very strong class in Mists of Pandaria. Now, while it is one that I don't know the most about, it is very similar in terms of what the two classes get, with a few differences to Cataclysm and Wrath of the Lich King. In Wrath of the Lich King and Cataclysm, the primary differences of a Frost DK and an Unholy DK is that the Frost DK has big burst with Howling Blast and Obliterate, and the Unholy DK has more sustained damage with their diseases, as well as having their Gargoyle and then being more pet-focused. Unholy is also a little bit tankier than Frost is in those expansions. Now that we are moving into Mists of Pandaria, they change a lot about the DK spec. So you can see that Lichborn is no longer Unholy only, Anti-Magic Zone is no longer Unholy only, as well as Asphyxiate getting a new ability where you turn your Strangulate into a stun for 5 seconds with a 30-second CD, which is very, very strong. Death Knights have not had CC for a very long time. In Wrath of the Lich King and Cata, all they have is Drip, Dual Stun, and then Strangulate, right? So giving the DK Asphyxiate really enables them to have a lot better kill windows, because they haven't had a long stun outside of their empowered dual stun, obviously, which was only for Unholy. So, with all that being said, the primary differences between Frost and Unholy in MoP are very similar. You have Howling Blast and Obliterate as a Frost DK, and with an Unholy DK, you have a Gargoyle and more sustained damage. Now, for the same reasons, I do believe that Unholy is going to be stronger than Frost due to the fact that your pets absolutely crank compared to how much sustained damage Frost can do. Whereas Frost is still viable and actually buffed, arguably, due to the change with Lichborn and Zone, as well as Asphyxiate, and having all of this available while having a lot of burst makes Frost very strong. Now, don't get me wrong, Unholy has a huge amount of burst as well. When they pop their Gargoyle, they pop their Dark Transformation, they use their CDs, then, they are both going to be very strong. But for a handful of reasons like Unholy Frenzy and having more sustained damage, Unholy is going to go above Frost. Since Mists of Pandaria homogenizes these classes a lot, this is a very specific one where Unholy and Frost are very, very similar. And for those reasons, I'm going to put Unholy in A and then Frost in B. Now, truthfully, I am not the biggest DK expert on MoP DK specifically. I have fought against them, and Unholy feels insane, and Frost feels insane. For all those reasons, I'm going to put these two in there. They are certainly a very viable class, and they are certainly very scary if you allow them to have uptime on a target. They also get double grip now, which is just terrifying because they grip you once, you get away, and then they grip you again, and then they asphyxiate you, and then their pet kills you, and then their gargoyles on you, and then you have Necro. So the game devolves really rapidly when you have a Death Knight just standing on you, pressing all his buttons. Moving on to the Magister. Starting it off, we have a spec that I don't know enough about, to be honest, to give it a real rating. I have fought 0 Arcane Mages in Mists of Pandaria, just like I fought 0 Arcane Mages in Cataclysm. Since I have not really played Arcane, it is, to my knowledge, very similar to how it was in Cata and Wrath of the Lich King. One big change that mages get is that they all get Deep Freeze now across every single spec, so you do have Deep Freeze along with your Arcane Blast, so you can set up a big go, get a bunch of Arcane Blasts, and then you do incredible damage like you did in the other expansions, but you have to just sit there and cast and cast. So, for all those reasons, I'm going to put it at the top of the C tier, and I'm going to now elaborate on that because I'm going to cover Frost and Fire. Moving on to our next class that I have fought quite a lot, is the Frost Mage in Mists of Pandaria. Now, normally, in an expansion, in the beginning of an expansion specifically, the very first season, that is historically when casters are the weakest, because they don't have as much haste, they don't have as much crit, they don't have as much spell power, they have a lower health pool, so they're more susceptible to die into cleaves. But in Mists of Pandaria, that doesn't seem to be the case for Frost, because Frost is absolutely insane. The Frost Mage in Mists of Pandaria is a very, very, very powerful class. They get a handful of new things going into MoP. Probably the biggest one that's the most notable is they get Palm Sheep now, which I believe is a 90-second cooldown. So basically, Palm is Presence of Mind. It allows you to instantly cast your next spell. So if you press Presence of Mind and there's a healer who's, very far away, if you just get into range of him, you just instantly sheep that guy, and there's very little counterplay, right? You can, if you're a druid, shift before. If you're a priest, you can death. If you're a pal, you can sack. But it happens almost instantly. So you have to be very aware of that, because mages have that ability to just palm sheep somebody, send a deep, and then you send the Frost Orb, and they're killing something instantly. Frost is in an interesting place in Mists of Pandaria, because looking at TBC to Wrath to Cata to now, right? TBC, you're spamming Ice Lance 24/7. Nova, Lance, Lance, Lance. Nova, Lance, Lance, Lance. Wrath of the Lich King, you're spamming rank 1 Frostbolt so you can get procs, then you can send a deep, then you can cast your Frostbolt Shatter. Cataclysm, kind of a hybrid, but Lance hits for a truckload. So in Cata, you get your deep proc, you get your fingers, and you can send the lances, and the lances hit for just psychotic numbers, like a third of someone's health bar, right? So, moving into Mists of Pandaria, it's kind of a combination of Wrath and Cata, right? You can sit there and just cast Frostbolt over and over and again, and you're going to do a lot of damage, but really all your damage is on a go. Frost has some of the highest burst in the entire expansion, for sure, that I've seen. If they have Deep Freeze, and they have Orb, and they have Veins, they are going to obliterate whatever target is in front of them, and them also having Palm Sheep on top of that, and Blanket to allow the go, is just ridiculous, because you have instant deep, you have instant sheep, and you have instant blanket. So you have 3 abilities that are all instantaneous that you can just start a go with by yourself. On top of that, mages also get Alter Time, which is a very big CD. It allows them to turn on the cooldown, and if you're unfamiliar, it will allow you to go back to your current state of where you were, as long as it doesn't get purged off. So if you have 100% HP and you press Alter Time, and then somebody hits you for half your health, you can press Alter Time and go back to 100% HP and back to where you were, right? It saves where you were and in the arena. So pretty cool spell, but obviously very, 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 very strong. Moving past that, Frost has Deep Freeze, like every other mage spec has Deep Freeze now, which is kind of the homogenization of Mists of Pandaria, as we've seen with a lot of the stuff. You can pick Blazing Speed, you can pick Frostjaw, you can pick Ring. Usually you'll pick Snap if you're a Frost, and then you can pick Living Bomb or Nether Tempest or Frost Bomb. Most people I've seen pick Living Bomb, which is kind of weird that you're Frost with Living Bomb, but it does do a ton of damage. So overall, Frost is an insanely strong spec. I mean, to say that Frost is anything below S, I think is just wrong. It's ridiculous. Your kit is huge. Your damage is insane. You have double block. you have alter, you have defensives, you have mobility, you have control, you have offense, you have defense. I mean, very, very strong. Very, very strong class for sure. And for all of those reasons, we're going to leave it in the S tier, which is the insane tier, which is where it belongs for sure. Moving up next, we have Fire. Now, Fire is an interesting one. Combustion is kind of nerfed compared to where it is in Cataclysm. In Cata, if a Fire Mage lines up their Combustion correctly, they can just triple kill the entire team. In Mists of Pandaria, it's not that level, right? Like, if they get a good Combustion, they're going to do a lot of damage, but they can't, like, global all 3 players with an impact, right? It does require Pyro to get kills, but if they are getting Pyros, they are landing damage, they are being very effective. I think one of the problems that you run into when you have such a strong spec as Frost is, like, when are you going to play Fire over Frost, right? With Frost having so much on-demand damage, right? You have the deep into the lances, into the orb is just unhealable. Like, the damage is crazy, right? Fire has combustion, they have pyros, they have DB, right? They have things, right? You can Dragon's Breath Sheep, like, it's still good. You know, maybe you could make an argument that you would play Fire into, like, a double melee for the DB, maybe. Maybe you would make that argument. But it's definitely not better than Frost, that's for sure. I think Frost is the best. I don't know, truthfully, if I would put it in B or A. It does feel that I have fought a handful of Fire Mages. With all that being said, Fire has less sustained damage than Frost does, as well as having Dragon's Breath, which is their really only benefit over Frost. So you have less sustained damage. You still have big damage on Deep Freeze, of course, because you can send Pyros into the Deep Freeze. And yes, to sum it all up, less sustained damage, still good damage on goes, you have Dragon's Breath, etc., etc. For all these reasons, I'm going to put it at the bottom of A tier, because it is still a very strong class. You still have the toolkit that the Mage has, right? Mage in general is just kind of really, really strong in Mists of Pandaria. Up next, we are moving on to the Hunter. Now, this is one of the classes that I don't know a ton about in Mists of Pandaria. It is similar to how Cataclysm works a little bit in terms of the Marks version of it. The biggest differences between the 3 specs are kind of similar. You have Beast Mastery, which has Bestial Wrath, allowing you to get your pet to be stronger for a short window for burst. You have Commercial, which has Chimera Shot and Aim Shot, giving you more burst on the go. And then you have Survival, which has Explosive Shot and Black Arrow, which allows you to have more dot damage over time. Beast Mastery Hunter, to my knowledge, has received nerfs compared to where it was at one point in Mists of Pandaria. BM Hunters are still the same situation that they've pretty much always been, where you're going to pop Bestial Wrath, you're going to try to do a bunch of damage. You now have Murderer Crows, you now have Stampedes, so you're going to press your go, you're going to try to get a kill, and if you don't get a kill, then, you know, you're going to kind of try to, whatever, just power through. But the sustained damage on Beast Mastery is not as much as Survival, and the consistent burst output is not as much as Marks, right? Which is the same exact situation that Beast Mastery was in Cataclysm and in Wrath of the Lich King, right? So with those 2 things being the case, I am going to put Beast Mastery into the C tier. I don't believe I've even seen a Beast Mastery Hunter on the beta, but I do believe that it's probably viable, but I literally haven't seen one, and I have seen a lot of Survival, I have seen a lot of Mark. And for that reason, I'm going to put it into the C tier. Up next, we have the Marksmanship Hunter. Now, this spec of Hunter is one that has Chimera Shot, which allows you to have a good burst window. Since Chimera Shot is rotating on a relatively short cooldown, every time you have Chimera, you have a chance to get a big go. You know, you want to line up your trap with your Chimera Shot, etc. Have everything. You basically play your whole class around that. Marks is definitely strong. I have fought a couple Marks Hunters. It is definitely decent. I don't know that it would be into the tier of very strong on the A tier, but I would put it into the B tier because I have fought it and it does do a decent amount of damage. Again, my experience here is very anecdotal on Hunter. I am not a Hunter expert at all, so I'm not going to tell you that I know every single inch of Hunter because I don't. It's just not true. I do have enough experience to know the basics of them and what is good and what is bad. And with all that being said, I'm going to put them into the B tier. I don't really care where they would go in the B tier. They are strong, certainly capable of achieving titles and stuff. But I don't know that they're at the same level as Afflock or Unholy Decay or Fire Mage. And for that reason, we're going to put them in the B tier. You can put them wherever. Top of B tier doesn't really matter. Moving on to the last spec of Hunter. We are going from C to B to A. The Survival Hunter has a huge amount of sustained damage. I have played against Survival Hunters, and I've fought quite a lot of them. I have played with them as well. Survival, to me, feels like it has the widest comp variety, right? Because in Mists of Pandaria, anything that does a lot of consistent damage is just going to be good, right? That's just kind of how MoP is. If something is doing a good amount of damage consistently, and they have CC to boot, that is going to be a strong spec in Mists of Pandaria. They still have Trap. They still have, a good amount of CC. Of course, they have enhanced traps. When you go survival, you get a shorter CD on your traps. You have explosive shot, you have black arrow, you have big dot damage, you have really a pretty wide toolkit, honestly. And hunters are also very mobile, as well as having a good amount of defensives. So for all of those reasons, we're going to be putting survival into the A tier. Great damage, great CC, can live for a good amount of time, good mobility, etc., etc. All of that is going to put it into the very strong tier, because Survival Hunter is certainly a very strong spec. Up next, we have the Windwalker. Now, the Windwalker is a brand new spec. Of course, it's a brand new class. It is the Monk. This is the melee punch Monk, right? Windwalker is a class that has a ton of mobility, a ton of damage, as well as a good amount of control with stuns and paralysis, etc. They are one of the more cooldown-dependent classes, and one of the more go-focused classes. They're not really a specialization that is like, oh, we'll just stand there and do a ton of damage 24/7, 365. They are definitely one that they are going to build up their Tiger's Brew stacks. Once they get their Tiger's Brew stacks up, they are then going to use them along with their other CDs they have available, and they are going to do a huge go and put a ton of damage in a very short amount of time. The Windwalker Monk has some of the highest bursts in the entire game, making it a very, very strong class, of course, along with having some off heals, mobility, defensives with karma, and overall having a very wide toolkit for it being a melee. So for all of those reasons, we are going to be putting the Windwalker Monk into the very strong A tier. It has a bunch of comps it can play. You can play with Warlock, you can play with Warrior, you can play with all kinds of stuff with the Windwalker Monk. They are a very strong specialization and a very strong tool when used correctly. Up next, we have the kitty cat. We have the Feral Druid. Now, the Feral Druid, going into Mists of Pandaria, is in a really weird position, right? Because in Wrath and Cata, you had your Nature's Swiftness proc. When you would spend your combo points, you would get your ability, which is going to be instant for 8 seconds, right? You press your maim, you press your Ferocious Bite, you now have a Nature Swiftness proc, and you can either Cyclone with that, you can Root with that, you can use it on a heal, etc. But the biggest thing is that you can use Cyclone, right? So with Wrath of the Lich King and Cataclysm, that's how it was. In Mists of Pandaria, the Feral Druid no longer can instant cast Cyclone. That's a really weird change, in my opinion, because that's a very core mechanic of Feral Druid, right? And so since we no longer have an instant cast Cyclone, which is like half of the reason that Feral Druid is strong, it definitely takes the Feral Druid down a couple notches. The mentality difference of Feral Druid from Cataclysm and Wrath to MoP is pretty different significantly. It's much more hold W Zug now than it was before. You could play Feral like that in Cata and Wrath, but you also could play it very, very control heavy too, right? So they've removed the ability for Cyclone, and the only way you can use your procs now is like a Healing Touch or an Entangling Root, for example. So this forces you to be in a situation where you're still building bleeds, you're still building damage, you still have maim, you still have the standard kit, you can shift, etc., etc. But you don't have your Cyclone, and you do have a lot of damage when you pop your Berserk, Incarn, etc. You pop all your CDs, you're going to do a big burst damage, but outside of that, you're kind of just like, okay. Your consistent damage is okay. It's certainly playable. I'm not going to say that Feral Druid is bad. It has comps that you can play, right? You play Jungle. Jungle's strong with Feral. There's probably another comp that you could play. The only one that comes to my mind that's like definitely rank 1 viable in MoP would be like Jungle, right? You could play Jungle, which would be Mark's Hunter and a Healer, and then a Feral Druid. The Hunter and Priest and Feral have a really good amount of synergy together. So playing Jungle with a Priest, you have Trap for 1, you have Bash Clone for another, because you can cast the clone, and then you can Chastise Fear the third, and you can do a lot of damage, right? You have the Hunter has huge incoming damage, the Feral has Berserk, you do a lot, you have a lot of pressure, you're a tempo comp. Just like how Holy Priest is a momentum healer, Feral Druid is a momentum class. One thing that is nice about Feral Druid is that you have Symbiosis, which all Druids have, right? So since you have Symbiosis, you're able to cast that on the Priest, and then the Priest can now cast Cyclone, which kind of makes Jungle pretty strong because of that, right? You have the Priest, who's basically almost a Druid, who can just cast Cyclone on people while you're doing damage, etc. So for that reason, I would put Feral into the B tier. It's certainly strong, and it's certainly viable to get rank 1, I would say, if you're very, very good. But you have to have the right players, the right comp, the right team, right? It's not just like this universally insane spec, that's for sure. And for all those reasons, we're going to put it at the bottom of B tier. It is strong, it is good, it's better than viable, but it's just better than viable, right? It's not like very strong, it's not crazy OP, etc. Up next, we have the Battle Pigeon. This is the Boomkin, the Laser Chicken Battle Pigeon Warlord character. The Boomkin is in a buffed position from where it once was in Wrath of the Lich King and Cataclysm. You now have Root Beam readily available as a pretty good go. You have your Knock, Typhoon. A big change going into MoP that you're going to see from Cataclysm to Wrath of the Lich King is that Boomkins now have a lot of off heals, right? They have a lot of off healing. In Cataclysm, if a Boomkin is off healing, it's going to heal you for 10, 20% maybe of your total health bar, right? Now it's gone back to that Wrath style, almost like a Dream State style, where the Boomkin can heal quite a lot when they need to, right? This allows them to be in a position where if the team is under pressure, they have a big toolkit to save their teammates with Cyclone, they have off heals, they have Knock, they have Bash. As far as from Cataclysm to Mists of Pandaria in terms of the playstyle, it's very similar to Cata to MoP. You're still going to be doing a lot of damage. Your Star Surges do seem to hit for a bit more in this expansion. Boomkin kind of has a bit more burst now, right? In Cata, you're kind of just spamming Moonfire and then occasionally getting a Star Surge here and there. It does feel like Boomkin can actually like put damage in now. Like if you allow a Boomkin to just sit there and just cast and just print damage, they can actually crank now. So for that reason, along with the fact that they have better off healing and their toolkit is wider, since the Druid obviously has a wider toolkit of what they can choose, we are going to put the Boomkin into the bottom of the A tier for Season 12 of Mists of Pandaria. Moving on to a very, very widely changed class specialization, right? From TBC to Wrath to Cata to now, Enhance has been in a weird position, right? With the strongest version of Enhance being in Wrath of the Lich King, where you had Preg Enhance in 2s. There's a few different things that make Enhance a lot better now. One, their consistent damage output has been buffed considerably compared to where it was in Cataclysm or in Wrath of the Lich King. As a new baseline ability for Shamans, you have Ascendance, of course, and the Enhancement version allows you to do 30-yard attacks with your Stormlash and your auto attacks. On top of that, you do a ton of burst damage as an Enhancement Shaman. If an Enhance is on top of you and they are popping all of their cooldowns, you are at a high risk of being dead imminently. They have Purge, they have Instant Hex from their Maelstrom, just like they have had in previous expansions. They have Shear, they have Totems, they have Wolves, they have a huge kit for damage. The Enhancement Shaman is the perfect example of just like a stand on somebody and just beat him to death class. Like, that's what Enhancement Shaman does. They literally just stand on you and just pound your head in until you're dead. That's pretty much how they work. They are very, very strong. I would definitely put them into the bottom of A tier. They, compared to where they were in Cataclysm, they are leaps and bounds stronger now than they were then. I would even argue that Enhanced in its current state is better than it was in Wrath of the Lich King even. Plus, them having a Tremor Totem is really insane. You're fighting a lot of teams that have Fear in Mists of Pandaria, and Tremor Totem is a huge cooldown that allows you to break all your teammates out of fear, right? All Shamans have it, of course, and Enhancement is no exception for that. For all of those reasons, very strong specialization, for sure, super viable, in the right comp, in the right hands, a very scary class to be fighting on the other side of the arena. We're going to be putting that into the bottom of A tier for those reasons. On the home stretch here, we now have the Shadow Priest. Now, the Shadow Priest is in a pretty strong position in Mists of Pandaria. It has a handful of comps that are super, super high tier, Like you have God Comp, of course, right? You have Resto Druid, Frost Mage, Shadow Priest, very, very strong. But it's not restricted to that, and it can play other stuff too. Shadow Priest is interesting. Some of the changes that they've made is that now you can use Prayer of Mending while you're in Shadow form. You can use Renew while you're in Shadow form. And then, of course, you can Shield in Shadow form. You do have Feathers, so for the first time, Shadow Priests are not slow around the whole arena. They actually can go fast, just like every other priest can. They do have a huge amount of burst damage, as they did in previous expansions, where if they get their damage rolling, they get all their orbs, they cast everything, and they are going to be blasting, then you want to be out of the way of the Shadow Priest. They are going to be absolutely cranking. Since this is a Season 12 tier list, I would put Shadow Priest somewhere in the A tier. It is a very strong, very, very strong class. I don't know where I'd put it. Again, all of these in terms of where they go doesn't really matter. Like if it's in very strong, it's just very strong. It's just a very strong class in specialization. It's super viable, in the right hands, very deadly, and certainly rank 1 capable with the right composition and players. It's pretty similar to the previous expansion, so there's not a whole lot to talk about. Shadow Priest is, the only difference would be that, like other healers and other hybrids, the off heals from Shadow Priest are really good now. All the off heals have been buffed significantly, so Boomy, Ret, Shadow Priest, even the Windwalker, Feral Druid Healing Touch, it's all been buffed a lot. So for all those reasons, we're going to be putting it into the A tier, which is the very strong tier, because it's certainly a very scary specialization. Moving up next, we have the Goku melee class. Now, this is the Arms Warrior, a extremely strong class and specialization going into Mists of Pandaria. Their toolkit upgrade is absolutely huge from where it is in Cataclysm. They go from having the strength that they had in terms of damage of Wrath of the Lich King, minus the strength of the Mortal Strike, of course, because MS is quite nerfed compared to Wrath. But on top of that, they have a decent amount of CC, and they're pretty unkillable. A couple of changes that you see from the classic expansions going into MoP is that now they can use Recklessness and Shield Wall and Retail back to back to back. So you could literally see a warrior Rec, Retail, Wall, Bladestorm, and they don't need a shield or anything, which is just kind of just objectively dumb in my opinion. That doesn't even make any sense because the whole class identity, Retail, Rec, Wall, right? On top of that, they have a bunch of new talents, right? They have Double Time, which a lot of them take. Obviously, you can switch around everything, but a lot of them will take Double Time, where you can use Charge 2 times. So you charge once, and then it will begin the internal cooldown. They have Second Wind, which is probably the most broken defensive in the entire game. Whenever you're below 35% health, you are constantly regenerating 3% of your health every single second. Which, I'm going to be honest, Blizzard, I don't know who greenlit that. That doesn't make any sense to me. It's just on. There's nothing to press. Oh, I took damage. I'm instantly healing. That's not good game design, right? This is stuff that's just really OP for no reason. Why would a class have this, right? It doesn't make any sense. Just, oh, I'm below 35% health. I now have a light well on me at all times. That doesn't make any sense in my opinion. Which is obviously broken. Which is, one of the reasons that Warrior is going to be in the insane S tier. Moving past that, they have Disrupting Shout, which interrupts all spellcasting within 10 yards, right? So you can AoE lock people out. So if you're fighting a caster, this locks casting Fear, this guy's casting Healing Surge, this guy's casting Polymorph, triple kick. That's a little ridiculous. They have an AoE Root Shout. So you just you run up to somebody, you hit it with a hamstring, boom, 5-second root. You have Bladestorm. You have Shockwave. You have Safeguard, which takes you out of it's like a dispel. It's you dispel yourself out of slows, right? You have Mass Spell Reflect into casters. When somebody's casting on your healer, boom, you just reflected a sheep. You reflect Coil. You reflect whatever. You have Stormbolt, which is a 30-second CD, and it's a 4-second stun that you can throw across the arena. It has a 30-yard range. You could just go, it's instant. These style of things are so really OP because you're a warrior. You're auto-attacking a mage. The mage just blinked. You use one of your 2 charges or leaps or safeguards to get to him. You're now on top of him. And then he's low, and the healer needs to heal. You instantly throw him with a Stormbolt, and then your druid just NS clones him out of it, and that's a 10-second CC chain. That's completely unavoidable. Obviously, you could stop the druid from NS cloning, right? If you were really smart, you'd blanket the druid, you'd stop the druid. But these style of abilities are so broken because it's instant and there's really no counterplay, right? You could meld it, I guess. I think you could meld Stormbolt. I haven't even tried to do it. Maybe you could meld Stormbolt. You probably could. On top of all this, on top of all of these things, they just crank, right? Warriors do a lot of damage. So they have a huge amount of healing by themselves all the time, regardless of if they're CC'd, if they're in a stun or not. They have shield wall that's usable with no shield. They have recklessness that has no negatives. They have die by the sword. They have mass motive. Like, just look at the list. Look at the toolkit. Like, warriors have such a big toolkit. They're just strong as hell in every regard. Like, I don't even know a weak point of warrior, to be honest. Like, I guess they're a melee, so you could, if you were the best player ever, you could just kite them somehow through their double charge, leap, intervene, safeguard. Like, I don't even know how you kite them. And then when they get to you, they just root you instantly with hamstring and staggering or whatever, you know? So, arms warrior is insane. For sure, it's insane. Really good. I mean, just a really, really, really powerful spec class. Absolutely ridiculous. And for all those reasons, it goes into the S tier. Moving on to our very last specialization, we of course have the Elemental Shaman key, right? So the Elemental Shaman gets a huge amount of buffs going from Cataclysm into Mists of Pandaria. You kind of see this situation happen where Ellie in Wrath is really good. Very, very, very strong. You go into Cataclysm, and now Ellie's nerfed into the ground. Barely viable. Maybe not even viable, you can make the argument. The damage just isn't there. It doesn't have the off heals it needs, etc., etc. And then you move back into Mists of Pandaria. Ellie not only has huge damage, but it has a lot of instant casts now, right? They make a change where you get instant cast Lava Burst off your Flame Shock ticks. So you have this situation where Ellie is able to shear, purge, have tremor, have all its totems, and then just crank damage, which is very hard to shut down, right? Because a lot of their stuff is instant. They get Lava Burst proc, it's instant. They're just shipping damage, right? And if it crits, they get if they get their go and everything crits, I mean, it's easily could be half your health. If they get good RNG and it's just like crit, 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 you could lose almost your whole health bar in one go just from the Ellie, right? And remember, as I said before, anything in Mists of Pandaria that does consistent damage, Frost Mage, Arms Warrior, Ellie Shaman, is a very strong specialization. On top of all this, they of course get Ascendance, which only makes their damage even more psychotic. They also have Tremor Totem, just like Enhance, just like Resto Shaman. And Tremor Totem is a massive, massive CD, because Warriors have fear, Warlocks have fear, Priests have fear, Druids have fear if they symbiosis a Warrior, right? So 4 classes have a fear, and you have an answer to 4 classes in the game, just with Tremor Totem, before you've done anything else for your team, which is huge. Plus, the fact that off-healing is crazy OP now. Ellies can keep themselves alive for a while. They can just sit there and just healing surge, healing surge, healing surge, and it makes it presents a situation where you don't have to just CC the healer now. You have to stop the Ellie from casting surge, right? So that really presents problems for the enemy team. All of these reasons, we're going to be putting the Elemental Shaman into the bottom of S tier. It is definitely insane. It is very, very strong. It has good utility, good damage, really strong class. It's got Hex, it's got Shear, it's got Purge. It just blasts. It's very, very strong. And remember, guys, anything B and up is going to be a rank 1 viable specialization. This tier list is for Season 12, and it is about 2s and 3s primarily, not really counting 5s so much, as well as just what is new with the class, what is good, what is bad, why is it good, why is it bad. This is the final tier list that I have created. Obviously, I am not a MoP expert, but I do believe it's relatively accurate. I have a decent amount of information on all the specializations. You could, of course, move certain things. Since this is a Season 12 tier list, which is the first season of Mists of Pandaria, things will change as the expansion goes on, of course. You'll see maybe casters get better, maybe some stuff comes down, some stuff goes up. But this is a general guideline as to what's really good. As you can see, most things are really good in Mists of Pandaria. Healers are super OP. Everybody has mobility. Everybody has damage. It's really the beginning of everybody does everything expansion. Thanks for watching, guys, and we'll see you in the arena.